Okay.
All right, we're with Abdiel Garcia. He is the former admissions officer at Harvard College, and he's current Associate Director of Academic Advising and College Guidance at Geffen Academy at UCLA. He's done a lot of great work, and he's going to give our students some tips on Common App essays. Welcome, Abdiel.
Thank you, Priscilla. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome, great. So thanks for having me and giving me the chance to do this presentation. So I am going to start by saying, share a little bit about myself and kind of what brought me to this space. So I think, getting to tell a story is really important when we're talking about the college application process. And for me, a lot of the work that I do is rooted in my story and in my desire to give back. And so my name is Abdiel Garcia. I was born and raised in Koreatown in Los Angeles, where my parents still live to this day. And so I was a first generation to college student. My parents attended, I think, up until the 6th grade in Mexico. And growing up, they always placed a premium on education, and to them, I owe them everything because they never really told me that I couldn't do something, X or Y or Z. And so college was always a possibility, even if the path there was not entirely clear, right? So this is a picture of me in high school. So sharing that, I actually had the good fortune of having incredible advisors, college counselors, when I was in high school, and I was able to attend a 4-year university on the East Coast, and finished my. I graduated with a bachelor's in child development, and again, I wanted to give back. I knew I cared about working in communities, and I didn't know if that was going to be through the sciences. I was always kind of a STEM student, but I took some child development classes, and that really clicked for me. And so I then was working at a school, at an elementary school, actually, after graduating. Eventually transitioned over to college admissions. And I worked at Harvard for the past 5 years as an admissions officer, and I'm now doing college counseling. And so I mentioned that because um, I think that when I speak to students, like I always make it a point to stress that the path is not linear, right? You might have an idea of what you might want to study in college, but that can change, that can evolve when you're applying to, whether it's 4-year universities, 2-year colleges, military academies, taking a gap year, like whatever it might be. um, there you always want to look for the doors that you could be opening along the way, right? Because there's always doors to open. um, and so what I want to focus this presentation on is really on one aspect of that, one of those doors, right? Which is applying to college, right? We could talk about college and what it can do, all day long, but at the core of it, one of the most important parts of this process is actually um, familiarizing oneself with the application process itself. So there are, and part of this too, I mean, I've been doing this for some years, so there's a lot of terms I might throw out that might seem foreign or completely new. And part of it is also just recognizing that some of this might feel like learning a new language, right? I mean, you see the term up here, whole person review, holistic admissions, like, these are not terms that you would ordinarily come across. And so part of it is just like breaking down some of the language, and realizing that it's not as intimidating as it sounds, right? That we can become literate with these terminologies. So I'm going to start here, and this, what you see on the screen is what is often the kind of the American way of evaluating applications, more or less, right? And I say, you know, I'm being U.S. centric because in a lot of parts of the world, when students, I want to move this, okay, um, when students apply to college, they have a pretty good sense of what they're going to go into. So you might be on a track very early on. And once you decide, you know, at the end of high school that you're going into medicine, you're going into medicine. And it's probably going to be, there's not going to be a whole lot of room to make changes. In the US, it's a little bit different. Yes, there are programs where you apply specifically for that thing, and once you major in that, or you kind of lock it in, and that's what you're going to be doing. Although, of course, we all know that once you graduate college, um, you then open another door of you know, kind of pursuing the route you want to take. But but by and large, the system in the U.S. is designed so that students can go to college to get a typically, you know, with a 4-year program, a 4-year experience that will allow you to explore a wide range of things. This is what is sometimes referred to as a liberal arts education, which, when you boil it down, really what it means is that you study one thing, but you study a little bit of everything else too. So think of, for example, um, a so you'll have what you call majors, right? You have an area of focus, and so let's say your major is psychology. If you're taking, let's say, 30 classes over the course of your 4 years, a good chunk of those, maybe half, maybe a little less than half, maybe a little more than half, will be in your major, and then everything else will be, maybe you'll be required to take an English class and maybe a intro math class, and kind of rounding out your education. So similarly, we can draw a parallel to how the application system to these universities works, which is that they are interested, and by they I mean a lot of colleges, from, you know, colleges in Southern California to colleges on the East Coast to you know, across the country, are interested in getting to know you, in not just as a student, but as a person as well, right? And so when we talk about getting to know you as a student, there is one very obvious way of doing this, which is looking at your transcript, maybe test scores if you took, you know, an SAT, or maybe you took an IB exam or something like that. So that's like the core academic evaluation. Now, on top of that, there are also other factors that make up this evaluation. There are things like your involvements outside of school, right? Maybe clubs that you're a part of on campus, at your school, but it could also be responsibilities that you have beyond that. So perhaps you might babysit a younger brother, or you have a part-time job, or you are training for a marathon, or you have a blog that you keep on the side. So all these things can work towards essentially count, right, towards um, your involvements outside of school. And basically what a college is trying to understand there is, who are you and what makes up your time, whether it's something that matters to you or is important to you or to your family. That all makes up the evaluation. And as you can see on the screen, all parts of the application are considered. And one thing that is so key to know is that there is no one single factor that automatically carries more weight than another. Because yes, let's be honest, first and foremost, these are academic institutions. So grades do, you know, not grades, but the whole academic picture is important. But the context, everything else surrounding that is important too, right? So colleges are always looking to evaluate you within your context, right? They can't compare you with someone who goes to even a different school, because what types of programs those schools might offer, what types of clubs, maybe your commute to a school, is different from the commute you would have somewhere else. Like all these factors do play a role. And so, okay, just trying to switch slides. And so what, let me take a step back now. So I talked a little bit about the whole person review and holistic admissions, right? And the reason this is important is because for colleges, it's important because you as a student will not only be a student at one of these colleges, but you will also be a community member. You might have the opportunity to live in residence, to live in the dorms, and one day you will go on to graduate and represent that university for the rest of your life, right? So the university really is trying to answer the question of who are we bringing into our community, and what are they bringing, right? What are they bringing with them? So I talked a little bit I mean, there's so many different pieces that, if you've ever opened up the common application, and I'll kind of explain what this is, you will see that there are a lot of questions on it, which is why it's important to give yourself plenty of time to work on it. And but you will also notice that on top of some of the things that I mentioned, there is also space for your teachers to submit letters of recommendation, for the school to submit, additional documents, and there's also a space for you to write. Right. So beyond listing your grades and your activities, you can also, you will have the opportunity to share a written statement. This is called the personal statement. It's also sometimes referred to as the Common App essay. Now, what is the Common App? So when you apply to college, you have to apply via a platform, right? Like you don't just log on to, you don't email the college your application, or you don't log on to a college website. You might have something like that, but traditionally the way it's done for a large number of schools is that you create an account via a platform like the Common App, where you will create a Common App account, and on that account, that's where you add the schools that you will be applying to, and then fill out your application within the Common App. When you click submit, the Common App sends your application directly to the school. So that's essentially how it works. Your Common App is your working space, so to speak, until you submit. The Common App is not the only platform that exists. I know I'm speaking with California students right now. So if you're applying to any of the UCs or Cal States, they will have their own platform. So it'll be like an equivalent of the Common App, where you create an account, and again, you apply there and then submit, and then it gets sent to those schools. But the Common App is one of the more common ones. Hence, it's aptly named, and a large number of the schools in the country use it. So that's what it is. And I spoke a little bit about the role that some of these other components play into the application process. And the essay, what it is really, is that the essay gives you a chance to share something else that a college might not know about you, or a chance to elaborate on something that you've maybe mentioned somewhere, but now you have a space to, in 650 words or less, share more about it. And so the role that it plays is that think of if somebody submits a paper application to you, or an online application to you, if you just saw their numbers, their grades, you wouldn't know maybe what kind of student they are, or how hardworking they are, maybe, or maybe some hobbies they like, but you wouldn't really know what that person is like, right? So the essay really gives you a chance to take the two-dimensional application and turn it into a three-dimensional person, right? You're getting a sense of their personality. You're getting a sense of the why behind some of the things they do, like what really motivates them, or maybe there's a story, an instance in their life that really shaped their outlook about a particular thing. Now, one thing the essay is not, it is not a space for you to brag about your accomplishments. It is not a space to tell a college, you know, you have to take me because of this and this and this. There are other spaces where you can say, like, where there are school specific questions, but the essay is a little more of, it's less of a hard sell of like, this is why you should take me, and it's more of a, hey, now that I have you, let me tell you something interesting about my life, or about how I see the world, or something that has shaped me, right? And it doesn't have to be the most earth-shattering story. You don't have to have had like the most unique, you know, childhood or story to tell to write a compelling common application essay. You could pick what can seem like a very, very ordinary thing and turn it, you know, into something meaningful, because really it's less about the topic, and more about what it's telling me as the application reader, say, right? What it's telling me about you, right? So I'm going to change the slide here. What I have here, and for the sake of you know, of the format here, we're not going to I'm just going to run through this briefly, but if we were in person, or if we had more time, I would take a different approach to this, which is that I would maybe walk you through some of these exercises, but these are just some ideas, right? It's not exhaustive. You could come up with your own things that work for you. And I'll be honest, some of the items on this list, some of the things I noted here, are things that I used, you know, many years ago when I was applying to college, that helped me write my essay. So part of it is subjective too, right? Like, you figure out what works for you. What before I go down this list, one thing you should note though is that when you're writing your essay, there is sometimes I get the question of how personal should it be, or how or like how academic should it be? Like, am I citing sources? No, it's not really. It's not academic in that sense, but I would say it's somewhere between um, something that you would write to, that you would be comfortable having a friend read, right? Or maybe even writing in kind of a journal that you would, you know, share with a friend or something. It's personal in that way, but it's professional enough that you would be comfortable submitting it um, to your English teacher, or having a family member, you know, like your grandmother read it. So it should strike that balance of being personal, but also being professional, and not being too, and being narrow enough that you're not all over the place, right? Again, you can pick a topic, and it is important that you brainstorm and that you write down some of these ideas, but also kind of reflect on, okay, where am I going with this story? And so as you're kind of going, and so I'll share kind of some of these ideas in a second, but um, but sometimes it's better to, and in this case, I would argue it is better to stay narrow in your topic than to try to cover three things in one essay, because once you start writing, you realize, um, 650 words actually is not that much. So one quick exercise you can do is literally you close your eyes, and it's kind of the walking through your room experience. So where you close your eyes and you picture something that is so routine to your life that you don't even think about it on a day-to-day basis, because it's just like, it's kind of like breathing air, right? So for example, so the example here I would do with students would be, You close your eyes, you picture yourself walking into walking into your home, right? And what is the first thing you smell? What do you see? Right? Who's home? How do you feel as you walk in through the door? Do you feel like a sigh of relief? Do you start thinking of chores you might have to do? Is it loud? Is it noisy? Are there other people? And then what do you do, right? What do you do? Do you leave your backpack by the door? Do you just walk straight to your room? And then once you get to your room, like what happens then, right? Again, what do you hear? What do you smell? What do you feel? What are you thinking about? Um, so I would encourage you to kind of follow that train of thought and go through an exercise like that, because you will notice that um, when you go through an exercise like that, and even set a timer, like set a timer for 10 minutes, and don't open your eyes until that timer goes off, and then just write. Like the second you're done, just start writing again for like 20 minutes. Just write, and you will find that you might surprise yourself with how much you're able to put on a page about, again, something that you probably don't think about much on a daily basis, like walking into home, and what that actually feels like to put into writing to describe that. Another exercise you could try is literally asking yourself the question, what matters to you and why? You could, and I would recommend that you do this, whether it's on a computer or on paper, but that you actually go through the process of writing. And it could be a number of things. It could be very serious, and it could be kind of lighthearted, right? Like, what matters to me is that like I can keep my Netflix account, open, because it's my way to de-stress. Or what matters to me is my family because, of XYZ, or maybe other commitments you have, or maybe bigger goals, bigger ideas, or even like issues that you're trying to solve in the world, or whatever it might be. It could be small, however small or big. And ask yourself why. Push yourself on this one. You can then ask why. Like, why does it matter to you, right? Have you ever like really questioned why some of the things that matter to you like actually matter to you, right? And dig into that. Like, keep asking yourself why. And it's kind of a Socratic method, and you could drive yourself crazy doing this, but again, set a timer, and don't take anything for granted. Question everything you write, and just keep expanding on that. And then you write an answer, and then question that, and then write an answer to that, and question that. That is going to get you to start almost like peeling layers of an onion, right? And trying to get at something. And it doesn't have to be, the point is not to land at some amazing discovery that you had never thought of, or something super deep or existential, but it's to start kind of weaving a thread to different elements of your life. And maybe in that process, something, or in any of these processes, something comes up that just feels like, hey, you know what? I've tried these different ways of brainstorming and these different exercises, and I feel like this is something that is like a glue that holds all these things together. Whatever that this is for you, will be unique to you. Um, Another thing you could try too is to take, maybe you get sick of writing and you want to, do this, say with a friend, right? You could take turns doing something similar, but out loud, right? You can brainstorm with a friend. You can take turns asking each other the what matters to you question, and why. You could, for example, again, you could tell I'm a believer in setting kind of in setting parameters, like setting a timer, or giving yourself, X amount of time to write, or to have a computer in front of you. Because I think that when you do those things, even though they're small, they can keep you on task, they can keep you disciplined, and they kind of make you take it seriously. Um, So you could take turns with a friend, right? Set a timer, and then one person is the listener, the person who's asking questions, and the other one is talking, and then you take turns, right? Obviously, you share what you feel comfortable sharing, but that's maybe, if you want to just do this in a more social manner, that could be an idea. um, go for a long walk. Might seem hard to fathom, but if you could go for a long walk without looking at your phone at all and really kind of sitting with your thoughts, that could be another approach to it. This is a little more unstructured in that maybe you could give yourself prompts, right? Maybe you could give yourself a question before you walk out the door, and that's the question that you're gonna kind of sit on and meditate and reflect on as you go on your walk. And the idea here is kind of, giving yourself maybe some movement or space to, I'll be honest, like I myself, like this was something that was very helpful for me when I was working on my essays. I would go on long walks because I find that sitting at a desk, I can sometimes feel like brain blocked. And when I can pace around and walk, get some fresh air, sometimes I feel like I'm able to better, even like when I was in college, that's how I would outline my essays, right? I would go on a walk and think about it and then come back and then write. So, again, whatever works for you. And you see at the bottom there, remember, and I hope this really takes kind of some weight off your shoulders, that you are the expert here. This is your life. These are your stories. No one can tell that better than you can. And what an honor it is for a college rep to be able to experience that, for you to trust them with this unique and special story of yours, right? That's certainly how it felt for me when I was an admissions officer. I really took those essays seriously because I knew how much work and thought went into them. So, I can share some tips here for the writing process, and there is obviously a lot that I could share, and if someone else were giving this presentation, maybe they would have their own tips for the writing process. I always feel like I have to be careful with this because on the one hand, I think it's good to have information as opposed to not, right? I think it's good to maybe like take a look at the prompts and sit with them and kind of get some advice as to what I just shared, what can I do to brainstorm, or what are some things to keep in mind. There's nothing wrong with that, but you also don't want to overload yourself with advice and tips and do this, because it's not a formula either, right? So everything I shared with you all in this presentation, it's one perspective, right? It's coming from me. Someone else might have their own way of looking at it, and so I think that goes. The same goes with just about any aspect of the college search process. Gathering information is good, but ultimately it's up to you to kind of just distill that and say, okay, like maybe I knew that already, or that kind of is intuitive for me, but this actually helps, and I think this is going to help me. So whatever you take away from this, I think is whatever is right for you. But I have spent, I'm in the 5 years that I worked in college admissions. I read well over 5,000, probably way more than 5,000 essays. And so in that time, there are some things that I found really, really fascinating and interesting. And that that I do feel pretty confident sharing with you all as kind of just some things to keep in your back pocket. So one is that, um, is that first point there, and I capitalize, show, because there is it's a very different thing to say, to write an essay that is saying like, I am determined, I'm a good student, I have gone through a lot, but I'm a stronger person now. That there are, I think that is perhaps a starting point. Maybe those are things that you want to convey, but you're telling me those things, right? Why don't you show me that? And what do I mean by that? Is really like, what are examples of that, right? What are ways in which you have been motivated, you have shown that you're determined, that you're willing to jump hurdles, you know, and maybe you're telling me, like, instead of telling me I really, you know, care about others, um, maybe you can tell me a story about one time that you really did put others before yourself, and that could be your college essay, right? So again, it's not about some earth-shattering topic that no one has ever thought of, because trust me, I think most topics have been written about one way or another. You know, we're not here to invent something completely new. What is going to be different and unique every time, though, is the fact that it is, and I keep saying this, it is your story, right? That's unique to you. And so that means that how you tell it and what you choose to focus on and all of that, that is you. And that's what's going to make your essay unique, right? And so in the show, that's, if you think about it that way, then the telling is a little more generic, because you know, many people can tell you I'm caring, you know, I'm determined, but the show, the story, how you got there, that's going to vary person by person, right? So that's why some of these exercises, like um, you know, going through your room and kind of closing your eyes and picturing what you see, all of that, that gets you thinking beyond the I walked into my room, and more into the, you know, the feelings and all these things associated with it that are a little harder to capture and require a little more digging in. um, I shared earlier kind of my anecdote, or my yeah, my analogy on how professional versus personal the essay should be. One thing I also share with students sometimes is that picture your essay on top of a stack of papers, and you know, maybe it's on somebody's desk, and a wind blows, maybe that there's a window open, and it knocks out all the papers go flying, and one of your friends walks into the room and they see the pile of papers everywhere, and they pick out a random, and it happens to be yours, right? They pick out a random essay, and without looking at the name, maybe it doesn't even have your name on it, but by reading it, they can tell it's yours. That's how you know you've nailed it because if your friend could, you know, read that and say, yep, that sounds like, you know, like Javier, or that sounds like Mary, then then you really are telling the reader something about you, right? So the this is kind of, you know, there's no hard rule to this, but if the common application essay, for example, tells you that your word limit is about, I want to say 650 words, um, and so I would say kind of stick close to that. You definitely don't want to go over. I'm not 100% sure about this, but you might not even be able to go over, and might just, you know, cap at that number automatically. But you definitely want to stick to the word limit. But you don't want to go. You don't want to be too under either, because then you're missing out on, you know, you're kind of giving away free space for you to share your story, and so I think that word limit is there for a reason. I think that's typically a good length for these personal statements, so take advantage of that space you have of that word count. I would also say that you want to give yourself time, and again, I've put it all in caps, because this is not something, it doesn't matter how good of a writer you think you are. I have always felt like I'm a decent writer, but there is no way I could write a personal statement in one night. And the reason for that is um, because to write a good personal statement, you kind of have to step back and dive in and step back. And it's kind of this dynamic iterative process of like, um, of having an idea and being like, oh, let me brainstorm this, let me start writing it. You share with somebody, or you think about it some more, and you're like, you know what, I kind of want to, I don't want to start with that, I want to start with something else. And or maybe you change your mind completely on the topic. So giving yourself time lets you do that without the stress of, oh my god, I started this essay the week before it's due. It's too late for me to change my mind, like, on the topic. I don't know if I picked the right topic, but I just need to finish this, right? It doesn't give you the time to go back and maybe proofread as well as you could have. It doesn't give you the time to maybe have someone else read it, which I would recommend. Someone who you trust, who you think would give you honest and critical feedback. Um, so you're not the only person who looks at that essay. And again, the benefit of having someone else look at it is that you're going to spend a lot of time kind of looking at your essay, proofreading it, that eventually it just like you need a fresh pair of eyes, right? And it could be helpful to have a fresh pair of eyes. So that's kind of what I would share on those tips. Again, there is more that I could perhaps share, or that as you're writing, other things that could be relevant. But I really do feel like these are just some quick and helpful and pretty easy to digest and common questions I get too, about like, how personal should it be, or how long can it go, and how much time should I give myself for this. The other thing I want to know too, I'm being mindful of the fact that this presentation, I wanted it to be kind of specific to that personal statement, to that Common App essay. But I also have this slide here because there are many other types of essays that you will probably have to write as you're going through this process. And they're similar and different in some ways, right? So, for example, you see listed here scholarship essays. Scholarship essays are might have their own kind of word count. It depends on the type of scholarship too. Essays and these platforms will be pretty explicit about this is your word count. But you want to follow the specific prompts that they're giving you, right? One thing I didn't mention is that for the Common App essay, you're given a lot of flexibility in terms of the topic. When you create a Common App account, you will see that under the personal statement, you can, I think the prompts, there's many of them. One of them is share something unique about or share a little bit about your upbringing, or share about a time that you had a failure and how did you overcome that. Or so there's all these different kinds of prompts that they give you, and then you can also like just pick your own you can make up your own prompt too. Scholarship essays, they might have their own prompts too, and so it's important to read those carefully, again, to give yourself time. Scholarship essays, scholarship is in the name, which means that sometimes these are essays that could literally make you money, right? Like if you're awarded a scholarship, that is probably the most you'll ever get paid to write an essay. That is, it's worth your time, right? This can make a big difference. Think about, you're investing a few days, a few weeks, spread out, working on these essays, but the payoff can be quite large, especially when we're talking about the cost of college, or how much of a difference a scholarship could make, or even for the Common App, like how much of a difference in your life, like going to college or having college options how much of a difference that can make, right? So the payoff is big. So it's really worth it to spend the time and energy on these essays. There are also essays, and I think I alluded to this earlier, that are more college specific. So the prompt might, as I wrote here, be something along the lines of, so why do you want to apply to USC? Why do you want to apply to Carnegie Mellon? You name the college. And so these essays are a little bit different in that obviously, you're following the prompt. So you want to get right to it, and you want to answer to the question. Whatever you do, like the most important thing is that you answer the question. So how do you do that? You do research on the college, and hopefully if you're applying to that college, that specific college, there are things that you like about it that drew you to it. So that's your chance to share that, right? Oh, learned that you have this incredible program in X, and I also find that this is a community that values Y, where I can collaborate with peers, and you can kind of take it in your own direction. But if I can substitute, if you're submitting, I put USC here, so we'll use that example. If you're filling out the why USC question, and you could easily substitute another college for USC, say I'm reading for Occidental, and literally, you can just copy paste it. That is not a good answer to that essay, because that tells me that you've written a very general college specific prompt that you can kind of just plug in anywhere you want, and you can think of it on the other end. The reader is not going to really feel like you're making a personal connection with that college, right? So you definitely want to take your time to answer them in a school specific manner. Yes, once you start adding all these things up, you will have to write many essays. That is the nature of it, and that's why, again, you want to give yourself some time with this, and again, have people who you trust who can kind of maybe proofread, or you can talk to about these things. But that's critical. And so lastly, the short answer prompts. So these are on the Common App. There are some short answer prompts, I believe, or school specific applications, school specific questions might come up that are something along the lines of, tell us about an interesting academic experience you've had, and they only give you like 200 or 300 words to answer that. Or how would it could be a really like creative random question, like, if are we alone in the universe? I had a college that had that prompt. And so one mistake that I have seen students make in the past is that they kind of leave these till the very end. And so you read a really strong essay, like a really strong personal statement, and then you read these short answer prompts that look like they were written the day of. And so again, you want to give yourself time with these. They're shorter, so there's less writing, but it also means you have to be more precise and really condense what you're trying to say. So that is a quick overview on my end. And again, this is a process that can seem really intimidating and daunting. And I understand that. I really do. When I was in high school, as I mentioned earlier, I was the first in my family to apply and to go to college. And so, and I did have a good team of like people that I felt like I could reach out to, mentors, counselors. So I feel very lucky and fortunate, and I think that made a big difference for me. But I do remember that feeling of like feeling kind of at times like I that it was a very big process that I was managing and just hoping I was doing it right. But if I can leave you with a few things, I would say that first of all, that I applaud you for your efforts and taking this challenge on. That even being at this point where you can explore kind of your possibilities to be able to apply to college, that's a huge accomplishment. Like, so take a moment to think about that you're like right here at this juncture, at this point in time, that you've made it this far. That's a big accomplishment. Now, this process in itself is actually, you know, it kind of goes by, like before you know it, it's over, right? While you're in it, it's stressful and there's different twists and turns. But I say that because you want to stick to deadlines. You want to be organized, and I can't stress that enough. Whatever works for you. If you have a planner, or if you you know, have stickies, or whatever works for you, keep track of deadlines. Stay organized, because there are a lot of moving pieces, and that allows you to also plan ahead and know how much time you can give yourself. But also, it you know, the fact that it is over at some point should be also like something to look forward to, right? That you know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. This is the college application process, is not the rest of your life. It is a very set amount of time that, you know, of your high school journey. And then, you know, the what you have control over is what you put into this process, right? Like, yes, there's something potentially scary about, you know, knowing that you don't really know what the admissions committee is talking about behind closed doors, and how closely they're, you know, considering your application to a certain school. But it doesn't really matter, right? Because those are things that you just don't have control over. What you do have control over is the work and the effort and the thought that you put into your college application. And if you're able to do that, then you should be able to go to sleep feeling good about it, right? Because you did your part, you did what you could to set your best foot forward in this process. So be kind to yourselves, be patient with yourselves, and I wish you the best of luck. And so I have this you know, question slide, because I welcome, whether it's at another point, you know, to whether it's to connect with you, or to be able to just encourage you to ask questions, right?
Okay,
Whether it's your
well,
college counselor or other folks around you. So thank you for your time, and I will wrap it up there.
thank you, Abdiel. We appreciate you.